Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Coming up at 40 after, David Knight joins us with breaking news. We've got a lot of great reporters. We're going to start having them sometimes not in studio with me here in the War Room, but in Studio B. And we have Studio C getting set up. So David Knight with breaking news will be joining us coming up. Jade Helm kicks off tomorrow. Joe Biggs, Jakari Jackson, and others going to be on the ground covering it. But right now, let's go back to Paul Watson. Paul Watson finishing up with this latest video. Who is behind the staged ISIS beheading video was your article. What do you think's going on?
Well, this was released over the weekend by a pro-Russian hacktivist group, which is based in Ukraine, called Cyber Berkut. And obviously, as you've seen from the video, it shows a film set with a scene that's made to look like desert scenery. 2 professional cameras recording it, a lighting rig. It all looks very professional. So they claim that it was hacked from an aide to John McCain, hacked from his, quote, electronic device during a recent trip to Ukraine. That prompted McCain to come out last night and state on Twitter, another nutty conspiracy theory from Russian internet trolls, I'm very proud to be target of America's enemies. So the speculation is, you know, was this created by a conspiracy theorist to create buzz on the internet? Was it produced by the Russian hackers themselves, which seems like the most likely explanation? Or is it taken from some kind of theatrical production or movie? We know that a film out of Turkey depicted an ISIS beheading, so it could be one of those 3. It seems more likely to be an attempt to embarrass John McCain, because in this tweet he also talks about, oh, they doctored photos of me meeting with ISIS leaders. There was some speculation about that when he met with Syrian rebels.
But by the way, he defended those visits against Senator Paul 3 years ago and 2 years ago and admitted it and said, I'm proud of it. You should meet with him too. So he's been caught in a big lie. I wasn't aware that he did that, Paul. Wow. I mean, I knew he responded, but I hadn't read your article yet because it just came out. That is huge. Do you have it in the article? Because my memory serves. McCain admitted he met with him.
No, we've got the photo in the article where he's meeting with Abdel Hakim Belhaj, who was the guy they empowered armed to overthrow Gaddafi in Libya. He's now the leader of ISIS in Libya. And McCain was pictured with Lindsey Graham, presenting him with an award. So yes, he has been pictured with actual ISIS leaders. He also met with those Syrian rebels who later defected to Jabhat al-Nusra and these other jihadist groups who are almost as barbarous as ISIS. So again, yeah, that smacks of desperation. He has to draw attention to that when it's been proven that he has met with ISIS leaders like Belhaj. So it's very interesting that he would even mention that in this context.
But, Paul, if you go back to when that happened 3 years ago, he defended it on the news and said, of course I'm listening to the rebels. You know, I've got courage to go in there and do this. So he's on record admitting it and defending it, and now I just saw his tweet saying he didn't meet with him. He is incredibly arrogant.
No, he's been caught in a flat-out lie once again, but it doesn't seem to have bothered him in the past. But again, the question is, if this was a fake ISIS beheading, why would they be off filming it in the background? If it was a top-secret operation, why would they allow that footage to even exist in the first place? Which is why people are saying this is an attempt by the Russians to frame McCain, to frame the US in general as being behind ISIS, which we don't need the conspiracy theories to prove that, because we know, you know, they were trained in Jordan. Many of America's top allies are funding them, have been funding them. Those mysterious airdrops of weapons from the US that always end up in ISIS hands. So those are the real facts that prove that.
Well, all I'm saying is I've seen one of the beheadings where it was in the desert and it looked fake, and it looks like the same background. So whoever staged this, if it is staged, did a really good job of what I've seen in the fake beheading videos. And we know some of the beheading videos we've seen have been cinematically shot, pointing towards the fact they're staged. Thank you, Paul Watson. Great job. More of your articles on prisonplanet.com. Larry Elder is a best-selling author, syndicated radio host, and a really smart fella. LarryElder.com. is one of his websites. He joins us for the next 40 minutes or so. Then David Knight will join us from our Situation Room with some breaking news and some analysis. And then we've got a CIA whistleblower on Benghazi with breaking information, Tosh Plumley, joining us in the third hour. Look at this story out of Breitbart. Mexican drug lord El Chapo, the guy tweeting at Donald Trump saying, I'm going to get you, told his wife to give birth to anchor babies in the U.S. so they'd be U.S. citizens and could be paid for. So isn't that just special? And doesn't that illustrate everything that Donald Trump is saying? You cannot make this type of stuff up. I mean, I can't go to Mexico with a woman, my wife or whoever, and just have a baby for free. They'd laugh at me. And then have the baby get welfare. But because Obama says America has racism in its DNA, well, we want to show we're not, so we're going to pay for it all. I mean, it's a joke. And then Donald Trump is saying things that are true, and the media acts like he's saying incredibly insane things. And that's what Larry Elder is here to talk with us about. But now the NAACP wants Stone Mountain Confederate generals sandblasted off Mount Rushmore. So they want that blasted off. What's next? Mount Rushmore? Well, I said it before Rush Limbaugh, and I said it before, and I'm not bragging, I don't say this stuff as hyperbole, and I said it before Louis Farrakhan. On record a week before, I said, are they going to ban the American flag? Because it flew over indentured servants, slaves, you name it. Every flag more than 200 years old flew over slaves. I mean, the Bible, the Old Testament, everybody had slaves. Black Africans had slaves. People in the Middle East had slaves. I'm not defending and I have no connection to it. Most white people that have come here came here after slavery. Their great-grandparents did. I mean, it's this crazy guilt that, I'll be honest, I grew up with some of it, which I guess since we were close to some bad stuff in the past, it was good to be aware of it. But now, jumping the shark, don't have brown bags in Seattle, and the name mom and dad is hurtful, so get rid of it on government documents, and boys and girls at public schools can't be called that because some people aren't boys or girls, so you're purple penguins. And telling a minority, good job, they tell the faculty, don't do that. It's condescending. It's turning us into mentally ill basket cases. But still worse, it's causing a backlash and making people that weren't racist then project the political correctness onto people, not understanding it's the political class engaging in this. That's my view on it. We're going to get Larry Elder's take on it now. But I tell you, Larry, I see this stuff going on the news, and I can't even believe it. It's so ridiculous. It's like satire. It's like a Monty Python episode. I mean, does the controlled, crazy left realize how whacked out they are? I mean, they're running things. They must know what they're doing. What's happening here?
No, they don't realize it. And Alex, thank you very much for having me on. 95% of black voters voted for Barack Obama, and the black economic condition is worse off than when Obama took office. Black income is down. Black net worth is down about a third over the last few years. The so-called wealth gap between whites and blacks is the widest it's been in 25 years. I don't know what more Obama could have done to the black economy other than take a baseball bat to it, and still he is celebrated by black voters. I don't get it. The primary problem in America is not police officers going after black people. It's not the Confederate flag. It is the implosion of the black family. Back in 1965, 25% of black kids were born outside of wedlock. Now, Alex, the number is over 70%. I didn't say this. Obama said it. If you grow up without a dad, you are 5 times more likely to be poor, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in jail. Do the math. Why are we talking about that? How do we go from 9 innocent worshipers in Charleston being murdered by this guy to a discussion about the Confederate flag? It is just bizarre. And in 1963, Alex, 4 black kids were bombed in Birmingham, and that time, George Wallace was the governor of Georgia, the one who said segregation now, segregation forever. The chief cop was a guy that sicked water hoses and dogs on black people. The Klan was so virulent. They called Birmingham Bombingham because there were 2 or 3 bombings just that very week. Fast forward to now, the South Carolina governor is a woman of Indian descent. One of the 2 senators is a black person. And we're still talking about racism in America. Give me a break. This is not your grandfather's America, for crying out loud.
And I guess the controlled left uses race to manipulate people and to divert off the real issues. And so they're desperate to, I guess, reassert it on a new generation to create more division. I mean, what are they trying to do?
That's exactly what they're trying to do. They can't talk about economic growth because this recovery has been the worst one arguably we've ever had, certainly the worst one since the Second World War. So let's divert attention. Let's talk about racism. Let's talk about Rachel Dolezal. Let's talk about the Confederate flag. Let's talk about anything other than the damage the left has done to the black family, to the inner cities, to black income. Alex, I wrote a book called Dear Father, Dear Son, and I urge your listeners to just read the reviews before you decide to buy the book. It's about my father who did not know his biological father.
No, I've read the book. I couldn't put it down. I read it a couple years ago when it came out.
Thank you. He grew up in the Jim Crow South. And he got kicked out of the house by his mother when he was 13 years old, never to return. And my father was a Republican, and he believed that the biggest thing that happened negatively to black America was the welfare state. And my father told my brothers and me, don't listen to other people talk about how horrible the country is, because it's substantially different than it was when I grew up. Hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. And while you can't control the outcome, you are 100% in control of your effort. And before you bitch and moan and whine about what the man has done to you, go to the mirror, look into the mirror, and find out whether or not you could have done something to have altered the outcome. That's what my dad told my brothers and me. That's what I believe now. But Obama has convinced black people that they're victims, and that those guys over there, the Tea Partiers, Republicans, black Republicans, they're victimizers. And by the way, we're the rescuers. We're there in the white hat, on the white horse. We're going to come in and we're going to give you social justice. Never mind economic growth. Never mind the implosion of the black family. Never mind the implosion of black home equity. Never mind black home ownership down. Never mind any of the other metrics I just now gave you. Let's call America inherently racist, say it's in our DNA, and convince black people to pull that lever 95% for us. And by the way, Alex, if racism is in our DNA, how do you go from 1960, according to Gallup, 60% of Americans said they would never vote for a black president, no matter how qualified. Obama, of course, gets elected in 2008, gets reelected in 2012, despite a lousy economic recovery and unpopularity of Obamacare. In 1955, only 4% of blacks, of whites and blacks in America said that they approved of black-white marriages. And now 87% of Americans approve of black-white marriages. So if it's in our DNA, how do those things change? It's nonsense. Obama got a higher percentage of the white vote than John Kerry did. Did Kerry whine about being affected by racism because he didn't get the majority of white votes? It's outrageous what the left has done to convince black people that they are victims, that racism remains a major problem in America when it is not. And by the way, pull the lever for the left-wing party, because we're going to fight social justice on your behalf. It is outrageous.
My problem is there's no doubt the Republicans have a better platform and better, more Americana ideas that'll make us a successful country and what made us so great. And they're the party that helped end slavery. They're the party that passed the Civil Rights Act. It is an inverted reality that we see here. But the Republican leadership now goes along with the Democrats and never really calls Obama out on what they're doing. And so until that happens, I don't think this country has a prayer, because I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and, you know, going to high school there, I mean, probably a third of the high school or more was black. And most, you know, my friends in sports and stuff were black. There was some racism back and forth, but that was mainly between hillbillies and who were racist and black folks that were racist. But it wasn't anything like it is now, where you're just bombarded with it. I mean, it is just insane.
Yeah, the Republican Party, interesting that Eric Holder said that America, when it comes to race, is a nation of cowards. I would say the Republican Party, when it comes to race, is a party of cowards. Instead of saying what I just now said, it's, oh, I once marched with Martin Luther King 50 years ago. I care. I care. What you ought to be talking about is the damage the left has done to the black middle class, the damage things like race-based preferences have done. They've created a higher dropout rate among black students. They get in under race-based preferences. They ought to be talking about the damage done to the city through urban renewal and through forced busing. They ought to be talking about these lousy government schools where 50% of blacks drop out of school and those who graduate cannot read, write, and compute at grade level. Instead, we're talking about what the white man has done and the Confederate flag and nonsense that has nothing whatever to do with the current plight of the black middle class.
Well, I think you've really hit the nail on the head there when you talk about they've taken our basic freedoms, they've taken our economic future, they've taken our jobs, and then all they give us is identity politics. That's why they're now drilling down into saying transgender. Don't say dad and mom. Don't say husband and wife. Don't say boy or girl. They're doing this with a straight face to just kill any identity that isn't just worshiping the state.
And that is why, Alex, Trump is resonating. And if I were Trump, I'd broaden the argument. He has not made the argument that illegal aliens pose a threat to job prospects of people living in the inner city. A friend of mine is named Peter Kirsanow. He sits on the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. He's black, and he said that all three sectors of the commission, moderates, conservatives, and liberals, agreed to a letter they sent to Marcia Fudge, a woman who's on the Congressional Black Caucus, and said, what's going on? Why aren't you stopping these porous borders? You're threatening the jobs and the promotions of inner city people, most of whom are black people. And he said he hasn't even heard back. So what Donald Trump should be talking about, in addition to talking about the illegality, is the threat that illegal aliens pose to the job prospects of people living in the inner city.
Sure, and nothing against the people pouring across wanting a better life, but here's the bottom line. A lot of them are criminals fleeing justice, and that's a fact. But more importantly, they are colonizing the former black areas and pushing the blacks out and taking the jobs. That's why the unemployment doubled. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. I'm your host, Alex Jones, syndicated radio host, best-selling author. Larry Elder is our guest till about 40 after. This is a short segment. We'll be back with us in the next segment. Elderstatement.com, LarryElder.com are his websites. Larry, I want to get into the Donald Trump phenomenon because the mainstream media wouldn't be saying his name thousands of times a day and misrepresenting what he's saying if they didn't have a plan. And I think it is to distract from the other Republican candidates thinking that Trump isn't serious, is going to drop out later. That's just what my gut's saying. But regardless, he's saying things that are true, so he has to be defended. But I know he's a really smart guy. He doesn't seem to defend himself very well in the way he's responding to a lot of this. But you were getting into black unemployment that, as you were just saying, has doubled the last 7 years. And there's incredible friction between the immigrant community that's mainly Hispanic and blacks. That's in local news. Where do you see all this going?
Well, I disagree. I think Donald Trump has been defending himself just fine by not apologizing, by not backing down the way Republicans normally do. Recall when Todd Akin said legitimate rape, all he was saying is some women, in fact, lie about rape. Not very many do, but about 10% apparently do. All of a sudden, Reince Priebus dumped on him, and Todd Akin got destroyed in the election. Donald Trump has not backed down. He's not afraid of being called a bigot. And I interviewed Jamil Shaw Sr., the father of the young man who was murdered here in South Central Los Angeles, a young man who was bound to go to college, and an illegal alien had just gotten out of prison, and assumed that the red that Jamil Shaw II was wearing was an indication of gang membership, when in fact Shaw was not a member of a gang, and he got blown away. And Donald Trump has brought out Jamil Shaw Sr. to talk about all of this and to humanize this. This is very important.
Sure. Well, Larry, I want to be clear. I mean, I think he has done well not apologizing. There's so many factoids, things you were mentioning, that, I mean, I guess if he had your brain on these issues, it'd be better. That's all I'm saying is that... I wish
I had his brain and his wealth.
No, I hear you, but you're an expert on this is what I'm saying. And that he just... Sure, he's not apologizing. That's 101. Don't do that. I agree with you. He's doing a pretty good job. It's just that they're misrepresenting him, and I don't think he's been attacking them for their lies. He just kind of arrogantly, which I guess is a good thing, just ignores them and says, I don't apologize.
Well, that's true, but it's early. He'll get sharper. He'll get better. He'll get more factoids. He'll sharpen up his arguments along the way, assuming he stays in. And so far, it's been pretty darn impressive. I was one of those, Alex, who thought he was never going to get in. Every 4 years, he comes out, makes a big display about running, and then he doesn't run. And I also didn't think he had as much money as he says he has. Apparently, he does have $9 million. Apparently, he can self-fund. There's never been a candidate like this with this kind of message, this kind of name recognition, and that kind of bankroll. And so this could get very interesting.
So you think he's serious? Well, it does show the other, 10 or 11 candidates Why aren't they getting hardcore on anchor babies? I mean, El Chapo, the billionaire drug dealer, is on record telling his wife to come up here and have anchor babies. We have to pay for billionaire drug dealers' kids now? I mean, this is ridiculous.
He's also on record threatening Donald Trump, for crying out loud. And this issue is a very important issue for people living in the inner city. And I think once more black people realize he's talking to them and talking about their economic interests, it'll be fascinating to see what kind of black support this Republican guy gets.
Well, I mean, I would certainly rather Donald Trump than a Hillary Clinton in there. But in your gut, and I really respect your opinion on this, you don't think he's some type of ringer just getting political attention for his overall empire?
Oh, I think it's all of the above. I think that Donald Trump feels the worst thing that'll happen is his name recognition will be even higher, and maybe he'll make even more money. But I don't think he anticipated the fallout. I don't think he anticipated that ESPN and NASCAR and Univision and NBC would dump him, and other people are also thinking about dumping him. He may even lose clients in his condos. Who knows? But I think overall what Donald Trump feels is the worst that'll happen is my brand will be even bigger, but maybe I'll make some noise. Maybe I'll make something happen. And let's not discount the possibility that he's sincere. He thinks the country's going to hell in a handbasket. He thinks our foreign policy is weak. He thinks our deals with various other countries are weak, and he thinks the country is going down, and he thinks he, as a business person, can do something about it. I applaud the idea of him going off the grid for this time and spending his time and his energy and his money trying to make the country better as opposed to making more money. Why aren't people applauding that?
I guess I have to say I applaud him because he is getting persecuted now, and he's not backing down, and he's not going to do the Miss America thing. He's going to focus on the campaign. Again, though, Larry, doesn't this show the other Republicans what they should have been doing the whole time?
It most certainly does. The other Republicans are wusses, and that's one of the things that pisses people off. I mean, how did we get Obamacare shoved down our throats? How did that happen? Obamacare, unpopular, not a single Republican vote, and you guys couldn't figure out a way legislatively of stopping this thing?
Larry Elder, LarryElder.com. Stay there. I want to come back and get your take on how do we reverse Obamacare? How do we control the border? How do we stop the hemorrhaging of our sovereignty straight ahead? And what is he most worried about with Obama in Obama's last year and a half? Final segment with Larry Elder, syndicated radio host, best-selling author. David Knight's got analysis on all of this that ties together with Dinesh D'Souza being ordered by a Democrat judge to attend psychiatric counseling for his mental illness. The judge is now diagnosing from the bench that he thinks the government's too big and bad. That's now a mental illness. That's right out of the Soviet Union. Right out of the Soviet Union. So that's coming up in a moment. Again, Larry Elder has been breaking down how we're having our basic rights being removed, but they're being replaced with infighting and obsessing over what color somebody is or where they're from. And then the sensitivity to it becomes just a ball and chain. But what I was getting at here is that what they do with political correctness on black and white relations or with the open borders or with kids can't call themselves boys or girls but purple penguins because it's hurtful. We talk about this and it doesn't sound like reality. It sounds like mentally ill cult leaders run the country. And so if it's already gotten this bad and they want to kick Donald Trump off the air with his TV shows because he said we got a bunch of criminals coming up here to escape justice and they shouldn't be getting their babies paid for. I mean, nobody else allows this. And so it is a upside downing of reality. What comes next, Larry Elder? And how do we overturn this? How do we defeat this system when the public schools don't teach reading and writing anymore? They just teach bizarro basket casing of don't be a boy and girl. Boys are in the girls' bathroom. Girls are in the boys. You know, you're a purple penguin. Let's learn about your white guilt all day on MTV. I mean, it's just crazy.
Donald Trump used the term silent majority. What people need to do is stand up and defend the values and the freedom that made this country great. We need more people like you speaking out. I mean, it is insane. And Donald Trump had the cashews to not once, not twice, but 3 times when he was in Phoenix, call Al Sharpton a con man. Who has done that? What other public figure has honestly and accurately called Al Sharpton a con man other than Donald Trump? And Donald Trump gets dumped by NBC, but MSNBC, one of NBC's subsidiaries, has given Al Sharpton, perhaps the most notorious anti-Semitic race hustler in America, his nightly show for an hour. Scotty, beam me up. It's insane.
And you're quoting the late Congressman Jim Traficant. I mean, it really is time to be beamed up, Scotty. I mean, this is, what do you expect next out of this lunacy?
Next thing, he's going to push for further gun control. Every time something happened, like what happened in Charleston, South Carolina, Obama talks about more gun control. Now, Dylann Roof did not stand up there after communing with these 9 innocent worshipers and pull out a Confederate flag and shoot people. He pulled out a .38. We ought to be talking about whether or not somebody in that church with a concealed carry permit might have minimized the damage. We ought to be talking about what's going on in Chicago and Washington, D.C., 2 cities with very stringent gun control laws, very high per capita murder rate. Most of the people being killed are black people. We're not talking about that, though. We're talking about the Confederate flag and Donald Trump. It is crazy.
Well, look, I don't want to pull a Han Solo here on folks, Larry Elder, but if I was a senator, especially a black senator in the South, where there are some crazy racist white people, and I'm going to be given a sermon, there's going to be one of these up underneath the pulpit, 357 Magnum. You know, it's only 6 shots, but I'm a good aim with it, and I'll be able to defend myself. I mean, in this day and age, we know more guns mean less crime. We know these killers, whether they be on drugs or be racist or whatever, only hit people they think are going to be disarmed. Isn't it time to start making areas hard targets? I mean, when ISIS tried to attack in Garland outside Dallas, it was an off-duty cop took those guys out before they could kill anybody. I mean, isn't that the answer? That he pulls that gun out and somebody pulls a gun out and blows him away and maybe only 2 people would have been dead? Him and maybe the first person he shot? I mean, isn't that the answer? Isn't it gun-free zones and an anti-gun culture really what ended up killing these people?
That is the answer, or at least that even the odds a little bit for the good guys. There are now 40 states that allow citizens to carry concealed weapons on a shell issue basis. And if it returns us to the so-called Wild Wild West, why hasn't at least one of those states repealed it? They haven't. And speaking of racism, obviously this guy was a racist, but to act like he's some sort of tip of the spear, back in 1969, another white guy named Charlie Manson wanted to start a race war, and he had a family, and he got 7 white people killed over 2 nights. We didn't talk about how much racism there is in America. We said Charlie Manson is a racist nutcase, and so is this guy. So let's not act as if some sort of movement on the part of white people to mow down black people. This is a deviant individual who acted in an evil, vicious way, and we ought not assume that, therefore, this reflects the racism in America's DNA, and therefore shows that we're not, quote, cured of racism. We're never going to be cured of racism. 10% of the American people, Alex, believe Elvis is still alive. 8% believe if you send him a letter, he's going to get it. That's a lot of people in America. But you can't look for Nirvana. We're never going to have Nirvana.
Well, I mean, he also, this Roof guy liked to wear black outfits. Does that mean anybody that's into wearing black, like Johnny Cash, is a racist? I mean, it's just crazy.
He also had a gold T-shirt on, and he also had the flags of Rhodesia and South Africa. Should we ban those as well? For crying out loud, it wasn't the Confederate flag that made him do what he did. He's an evil degenerate and should be regarded as such, the same way we regarded Charlie Manson.
Well, notice both of them were on hard drugs.
Both of them were on hard drugs. Both of them wanted to start a race war. And both of them thought by doing this, they would start one. They were both crazy. They're both insane. We assumed Manson was insane and a deviant, but we're acting like Dylann Roof represents some sort of a movement in America, when in fact he doesn't.
Sure. In fact, can we put Dylann Roof and Charlie Manson, pictures of them up on screen as soon as you can? You look at both of them, they have that crazy look in their eye.
They sure do.
And
again, in 69, we said Charlie Manson was a hateful deviant. Why aren't we saying the same thing about Dylann Roof all these years later, after we've had the election of a black president and the re-election of a black president?
I mean, I look at Charlie Manson and I just see, I mean, look at them. They've got the same crazy look in their eye. And they were both on hard drugs.
And in Manson's case, he at least had a following. Dylann Roof, in his racist manifesto, complained that he couldn't even get anybody to follow him. He said the Klan wouldn't even follow him. That's the extent to which racism has reduced as a problem here in America.
And let's just say it, the Democrats that were the party of the Klan are very upset that their race politics might be in trouble, so they're trying to reignite it. And Larry, in closing, I want you to comment on this and whatever else is on your radar, because I've been asking the questions. But my concern is you see the knockout game, and those are isolated, but it is happening a lot around the country. You do see racial attacks against whites. And the people doing it really think they're doing a good job because the media's told them, you know, all white people hate you and they're the reason you're unemployed. And they got a bunch of young kids, hoodlums. I mean, if you see them, the same folks that are robbing people in their own neighborhood out doing this. And when it happens, the media is even scared to admit it's a racial attack by racist blacks against whites because MSNBC and other con men like Al Sharpton have legitimized it. So if whites are going to be collectively blamed, which we know is a fraud, for bad white people doing stuff, then what about this push by the new Black Panthers and others to say, hey, don't mug and thug in your own neighborhood. Go do it to Whitey. I'm really concerned with this new thing, pull down Confederate flags out of people's backyards. I'm afraid there's going to be a flashpoint here and that the Democratic Party really is playing with fire. And I think they're trying to start a civil war. And that's what George Soros does in other countries. And George Soros is funding all the anti-cop stuff. What do you think's going on?
Well, facts don't matter. The fact is that over the last 30 or 40 years, police shootings against blacks are down about 75%. Police shootings against whites have flatlined. And in 2012, the last year, the CDC has numbers, about 140 blacks were killed by cops. Over 2.5 times that many whites were killed by cops. The fact is that there's a study that came out at University of Washington. Black and white cops are more reluctant to pull the trigger against a black suspect than a white suspect, probably because they feel there's going to be a raft of grief. And over the last 10 years, about 1,000 blacks have been killed by cops. About 2,000 whites have been killed by cops. Last year, 6,000 black people were killed, mostly by other black people. Chicago alone, about 40 per month. Most of those are unsolved. Most of those are by and against other black people. And you mentioned violent interracial crime. There's about 500,000 to 750,000 violent interracial acts of crime, black-white, every year. That's murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, rape, assault with a deadly weapon. 75% are black perpetrator and white victim, only 15% the other way around.
And I think, because I've read the police reports, I've seen the news articles, the people say, I did it, like that guy up in Michigan, because they were white. They somehow think, like the Klan goes out and kills some black person and hangs them because they deserve it. It literally is like Klan ideology the Democrats are trying to project on the black people. It's sick.
Well, that's what they're trying to do. As I mentioned before, the Democratic Party has to make black people feel like victims. Otherwise, how do you justify going in that voting booth and pulling that lever 95% for one particular party? You have to malign the Republican Party, have to call the Republican Party racist, have to say that they're trying to, as Debbie Wasserman Schultz once said, roll back the clock to Jim Crow and convince black people that the man's out to get you. Otherwise, you can't scare people into voting 95% for one party. Let's not talk about the facts. Let's not talk about the family. Let's not talk about what Obama's done to the black middle class. Let's talk about racism and social justice. That's what they're all about, because they can't talk about economic growth because they have no story.
Well, it's really sad because up until Obama got elected, I saw a lot of racial harmony, people coming together. It was just really refreshing. And now I've never seen it so energized in my whole life, not growing up in the, early 70s and stuff, in the 80s. And it just is, it's so cold-blooded. And I can just see the Democratic Party spin doctors, the PR firms in their meetings going, we've doubled unemployment. People are waking up. They're upset. We're not delivering. Just create balkanization. It's how the British controlled India with just a few thousand troops, was playing different religious groups off against each other. And they've just cold-bloodedly done this to us, Larry. And I'm really concerned now that they're going to put Hillary in, and it's going to be not, oh, you're racist if you don't want Obamacare. It's going to be, you're sexist if you don't support whatever she's doing. And, it's just so insulting that I would love to have a female president if she agreed with basic freedom. I don't care if it's a woman or a man. I like a lot of the stuff Margaret Thatcher did. It's so insulting to be told I don't like Obama because he's part African, or that I don't like Hillary because she's a woman. I don't like Hillary because she's an absolute criminal monster.
It is insulting, but I got to tell you, I once interviewed Kwesi Mfume, one of the few so-called black leaders I was able to get on my program. And I said, Mr. Mfume, as between the presence of white racism or the absence of black fathers, which poses the bigger threat to the black community? And to his credit, without missing a beat, Alex, he said the absence of black fathers. So some people are getting it, and I notice that young blacks are far less likely than older blacks to self-identify as Democrats. They're not identifying as Republicans, but they're identifying as independents because they see what's happening to their economic future. They have no jobs. The black teenage unemployment is up, and people coming out of college can't get work. And they're saddled with a lot of debt.
That's right.
So a lot of young people are beginning to rethink their assumptions. And so that's probably the only silver lining I can think of to 8 years of President Obama.
And if the Republicans would line up with a more libertarian mindset and would promote things, then they would support them. But the Republicans are so bad in the leadership that I get why young people don't want to be involved with them as well. Larry Elder, thank you so much for the time. LarryElder.com. Folks can find your books, your essays, your radio and TV shows. Congratulations on the success in the last 20 years of your work. It's just great to have you out there.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex. I appreciate it.
You bet. Great to have Larry Elder on with us. Okay, in the Situation Room is David Knight. We're going to go to him here in just a moment. Briefly, we have free shipping in the month of July on all products that ship out of our warehouse. And that's basically 99% of the stuff that's in there. There's a few items like storable food and things like that that go from the warehouse of the producers. My Patriot Supply. We have their entire spectrum of My Patriot Supply products at the same price they sell them. It just supports this broadcast when you buy it from us at InfoWarsStore.com. But you won't get the free shipping. That's just an example. But everything else that we sell, shortwave radios, non-GMO seeds, super high-quality nutraceuticals, books, videos, it's all free shipping right now. 25% off on the Molon Labe belt buckles. Those will be sold out soon, so that special will have to end. 10% off all the T-shirts. And there's just a bunch of other specials in the month of July celebrating our independence at InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com. And we did sell out of Prostagard for 2.5 months. It's back in, and I guess I screwed up again and didn't order a bigger order. They did the first original order again, so that will probably sell out in a few weeks. It did last time. The best prostate formula out there, but has so many other great effects. Just read more at InfoWarsLife.com. And we will sell out of the best Nascent Iodine purest form out there, X2, in the next week. It will sell out, and it'll be at least 2-3 weeks till we get more, and that's if we're able to secure it. We're trying right now. I'll know in the next few days. But to be sure you get it, Survival Shield X2 is selling out. Super Male and Super Female Vitality will sell out in the next week and a half. That's a conservative estimate, but those will be back in within a month, so that'll just be sold out for 2 weeks. Brain Force should be back in about 3 weeks, but we're not going to start pre-order until next week to make sure after it's already manufactured, then it's got to be tested 3 times. And so that's what I'm not complaining. It's just to have the highest quality and not cut corners. It's hard. And then sometimes we just can't get an ingredient anymore, and we have to change the formulation. I mean, we just go through a lot of stuff here, but it's the highest quality. InfoWarsLife.com. And you have my pledge to not compromise, to promote human liberty with your support. Please keep spreading the word about the broadcast as well. You can also call toll-free 888-253-3139. Now, joining us from the Infowars.com Situation Room, the former radio studio that we've had here for 8 years in these offices, is David Knight. And more, we're just going to have our reporters from locations in Europe, locations in California, locations from studios in this building, just break in. And I've told them I want this to be live, powerful, real. When they get something interesting, something breaking, an analysis, just let me know 10 minutes before. In this case, it was an hour before. And we'll just have them go in the other studio. I'll break into a guest or come in after a break with a minute of information, 5 minutes of information, 10 minutes of information to keep you up to date on the latest. So David Knight joins us from the Situation Room. I'm here in the War Room at InfoWars headquarters. David Knight.
Alex, I wanted to talk about what's going on with Dinesh D'Souza. And of course, you've mentioned this earlier. We have the article up on Infowars.com from WND, Jerome Corsi. The fact that this is raw political persecution, like we've seen before in the Soviet Union or East Germany. This is a Democratic judge ordering psychological counseling for Dinesh D'Souza and an additional to continue his community service for another 4 years. Now,
and by the way, that's super expensive.
Yes, yes. And this is a situation, Alex, where the judge has overruled the recommendations of 2 licensed psychological counselors. Okay,
and this is Reagan's former top speechwriter and a member of the administration and one of the most successful documentary filmmakers of all time.
Exactly, because he's a threat to this kind of mindless witch hunts that we see coming on right now throughout everything that touches on the South. I mean, Alex, we've even had Atticus Finch now being reinvented as a Ku Klux Klan racist, the guy who was in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Atticus that goes up against the racist.
Yes.
And everybody, he's now a racist? I didn't know that.
He's now a racist. That's the book that is now being released. Of course, the original author, Harper Lee, is now 89 years old. Her lawyer claims that she found a manuscript. A lot of people said it looks like fan fiction, so I don't know if this is authentic or not, or if this is just an effort to make a quick buck and to tap into the zeitgeist of the culture right now to go after.
Yeah, this is a race-baiting orgy.
Yes, exactly. It's absolutely insane. And, of course, we cannot have any white men who are role models, especially if they're Southern. We have to...
That's why he has to be gotten rid of. But this is racism against Southerners.
And listen to what the judge said, too, Alex. He says, I'm not singling out Mr. D'Souza to pick on him. A requirement for psychological counseling often comes up in my hearings in cases where I find it hard to understand why someone did what they did. What did he do? He didn't fill out some paperwork. There wasn't any criminal intent. There wasn't anything psychological about donating money to somebody's campaign. He
formed a PAC that raised $30,000 and didn't fill out the right paperwork, just like the Texas Attorney General, who's now about to be indicted.
So they nail him on a technicality, and then what they do is they try to pretend that he is psychologically disturbed somehow so they can keep their hooks into him for a long time. This is raw political manipulation, going after their political opponents, creating a crime where there is none. And yet, look at what happened in this article I talked about last Friday when I was on the radio about Eric Holder. As Matt Taibbi with Rolling Stones pointed out, he never sent anyone to jail for financial crimes, and yet we had large banks that were manipulating the LIBOR exchange. They were laundering money for drug cartels and terrorists. El Chapo, that's everybody is talking about, who just escaped from prison. He was head of the Sinaloa cartel, and they were making videos of them chopping people's heads off with chainsaws, and yet Eric Holder couldn't find anything to send this guy to jail for. Couldn't find anything to send the HSBC people who were laundering money for him. They even gave the Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo, their own private window to do cash deposits and withdrawals. That's how criminal this organization is. And Obama said some of the most damaging behavior on Wall Street, in some cases, some of the least ethical behavior on Wall Street wasn't illegal. In other words, they try to make every excuse they can. And Matt Taibbi pointed out, he said, yes, some of it wasn't illegal, but a huge amount of it was.
Here's the deal. Wachovia and Wells Fargo got caught running the drug aircraft and owning them and leasing them. And Holder now sits over the big Wall Street firm that if they certify what your bank or group is doing, never gets overturned by the Justice Department because it's the payoff door where they go in and out.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course, that's the headline. Eric Holder comes in out of the cold back into Wall Street. We can put that back up on screen. Powerful photo of him walking off Air Force One for the last time. Why Eric Holder's new job is an insult to the American public. Even Salon, that's connected to the White House, I don't know what they're doing telling the truth, says it's a bad thing. I mean, this is so naked that Dinesh D'Souza, no criminal record, didn't even have speeding tickets.
You know, you really nailed it, Alex, a year ago when you did the interviews with Dinesh D'Souza. One of the videos that you put up, this is the title, Dinesh D'Souza sentenced to brainwashing camp. That's precisely what this is. This is so over the top. And yet you've got Eric Holder, who made $2.5 million from this law firm representing the big banks that he refused to prosecute. They even kept his office vacant for him, Alex. He never really left their employ, did he?
Well, that's right. And to be clear, the reason I said that a year ago on July 14th, well, I mean, yesterday was the 14th. The reason I said that a year ago was because in the prison he was in, the minimum security facility that he was in, it was basically just all psychological counseling all day long. Imagine 9 months in there being basically brainwashed.
Yeah, exactly. And now they're going to continue that even over the recommendations of professional counselors. Like I said, if they want to go after somebody, we see this kind of like the French Revolution, the way they're going after every single vestige of symbolism, after they're going after every cultural icon. Of course, Disney for the longest time did not allow Song of the South to be sold. They said it looked like it was racist because it was about a former slave. Look, Aesop's fables were written by a former slave. The real story here is that a slave like Aesop's, a slave like Uncle Remus, and of course Uncle Remus wasn't a real person, it was a collection of multiple older slaves that this man had met on plantations when he worked on the plantations himself. He put together the stories, he told what their names were, and he told their stories.
That's a story that should be celebrated.
Exactly.
It's empowering, and they want it banned. That's what's so crazy, is that they want to be able to take down even good things because they know if they can do that, they can ban anything they want, any time they want.
And that's what we're seeing right now. They're flushing African-American culture down the memory hole just like they are all Southern culture. And yet the real story here, Alex, as you point out, is a slave who transcends his masters. We don't know who the masters were.
Maybe we should ban the movie Spartacus because it's about a slave.
Exactly, exactly. And yet we have the Southern Poverty Law Center. Morris Deese, the founder of them, actually worked for George Wallace in the rabid segregation days. He actually defended the Klan, who were burning buses of protesters, who were beating protesters. He made enough profit off of that, it was equivalent to what the median family income of 4 was in those days. And then Morris Deese, founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center, sat out the entire civil rights movement. About a decade later, he was brought back in because he had become a mass marketing direct marketer expert. They brought him in for the McGovern campaign. Then he took that list of people that he got from McGovern and started the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you want to get somebody who's connected to the Klan, if you want to get somebody who is rabidly racist, it's Morris Deese. It's not Atticus Finch.
And that's what's crazy is that the Democratic Party was racist, was the founder of the Klan. They couldn't beat Republicans because all these vets were coming back in the South and refusing to be part of the oppression that was indeed happening in some areas, like my dad's dad. He flipped being a Republican, ran for county government, won. The family wasn't upset with him, but he was the first person, because, Texas was Democrat, to do that. But that was everywhere. They came back and they said, we're ending this. This is over. And Eisenhower led that movement. The Republicans led that movement. And then they flip it and turn around and say that the NRA is the Klan. Again, it's an inversion of reality, David.
Well, the troubling thing, too, Alex, is that, of course, the SPLC has been doing this. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been doing this for a very long time, flipping reality. But now we see this going viral, going across the entire country. It's like watching the 2 Minutes of Hate from 1984, where everybody just screams at Goldstein because they have to have an enemy. And that's what this is. This is an irrational purging. It's an ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, don't be mad at the foreign bankers looting you. Don't be mad at the fluoride in the water. Don't be mad at all the stuff happening to us. Just scream and yell and hyperventilate if you see a rebel flag, and next it's a brown bag. Stay with us. We got Tosh Plumlee coming up, too. CIA whistleblower. Hey, be mad about the government shipping drugs in. David Knight, I noticed there in the studio, you've got a stack of other items you wanted to mention. We got Tosh Plumlee joining us in the next segment with more info on Benghazi. But first, get into those other points from the Situation Room.
Well, Alex, when we're talking about the coming after cultural icons, even like Song of the South, like To Kill a Mockingbird, those were works of fiction that were essentially uniting fiction. I mean, they were uplifting. They brought black and white